dear unknown friends. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Sophiurgist. That I hope that y'all can hear me okay. And I want to welcome you all back. I guess some housekeeping is in order. To begin, I've adjusted the live chat so that it instead gives a 30-second timer in between 30 seconds between when you last post to the live chat to when you can post again. This is to hopefully ensure maybe some more, to introduce some more animus for those who may want to comment or have a few different things that they want to say. And I pray that 30 seconds may incentivize everybody more. Otherwise, Christmas decorations are going up. My wife and I, we went out tree hunting today and found a delightful little tree, about 7 feet tall. I have 10-foot ceilings here, and but for the life of us, we could not find ourselves a tree stand to put it on, which was a little bit annoying, but eventually what we did was we settled on, we found ourselves a terracotta pot, a nice heavy terracotta pot, and a few bricks and some loose stone, some coarse stone, and we filled it in. We put the bricks in, brought the tree in, set the tree in inside of the pot, made sure that the bricks were all touching against the tree, and then we filled in around those with the loose stone. I think maybe in the future what I will do is instead get some thick PVC pipe that is about the width of tree trunk, and then fill with the loose stone around that instead. But for right now, that's what we were able to find. Everyone in the area is completely sold out, and they're not anticipating any new shipments of anything in, and I don't feel like ordering a tree stand that is going to get here before, or that's only going to get here the day after Christmas or so. Let's see. If this is your first time, welcome. And for everyone else, if you haven't yet subscribed, I ask that you please do consider a subscription. We are just under 200 away from reaching 1,000 subscribers. Now, while I've never really approached this channel as a capitalist endeavor, I nonetheless recognize that there are benefits to increasing the number of subscribers. It helps with the algorithm in order to promote more. It promotes these discussions. For me, what's the most important are the discussions that we are having here. In addition to subscribing, please make sure to like the live stream and the video as well. This also helps to increase engagement and helps to get these live streams and these videos in front of more people. The mission here is always, first and foremost, to be a video journal, some form of a video journal. By introducing live streams into the mix, we then have this then becomes more of a an interactive journal, if you will. I do appreciate any and all comments and live chats as they come, and I do my very best to respond to every comment, even if it's simply just to heart a comment. I recently had a comment roll through that came from someone who had watched my book review on the liturgical rosary, and it was one of the most fascinating comments I've ever received, and I want to thank that person for sharing their testimony. It is very fascinating and just a pure it is an instance of pure providence that can't be counterfeited. It came across as quite genuine. So, for the purposes of tonight, there's quite a lot that I want to cover, and some of the subject matter that we're going to touch upon tonight, I just want to give a fair warning. I might have to dance around a few words in order to help reduce the chances of the live stream getting taken off of YouTube. So hopefully we can avoid that. We will see. I'm not terribly confident, but we're going to give it a try anyway, because these subjects, especially the subject that I want to cover closer to the end, is very important and deals with eschatology, and it deals with how we should have got a annoying pop-up. I have an antivirus that will occasionally just give me a report in the corner of the screen to let me know how the computer's doing. All right. Anyhow, so someone that a few of you may be subscribed to, in addition to this channel, especially if you are of the Catholic persuasion, is somebody by the name of Roger Buck. Roger Buck is a convert from not quite the militant New Age, but definitely from a fervent strain of the New Age. He was in Findhorn. He would travel across France. All of this is detailed in his book, which, for the life of me, I still have yet to read it. I've heard the story the way he's told it in videos and in some recorded talks that he's given. So perhaps maybe once it's sort of slipped my memory a bit more, perhaps then I'll finally dive in and read the book. It's called Coriezu Sacratissimum, and it's his conversion story. Now, he also nowadays, I believe, runs a Substack rather than a blog. He used to have a blog. Now it is transitioned over to a Substack. And one of the contributions that Roger has made in the Catholic sphere of the internet is, aside from sharing his conversion story, his insights into sort of the modern zeitgeists that we seem to be under the thumb of, and yes, some of it he will take a few cues here and there, not without much criticism towards the source, but he'll take some cues, concepts from Rudolf Steiner, but he will always make sure to show where Steiner is incorrect and how the solutions that Steiner is looking for are actually already present within the Catholic faith, more so within the deposit of faith, rather than in the human clerical element as it operates today. But for our purposes here at this channel, some of Roger's greatest contributions have been in regards to the cleansing of the online perspective on Tomberg. And for those of you who may not know, I myself, and perhaps it will be helpful to briefly touch upon sort of my interaction with Tomberg. And so for myself, raised Catholic, I began my catechesis began within the Novus Ordo up until the age of 8, if my memory serves me correctly. I had received my baptism and my first communion within the Novus Ordo, after which we lost some very good pastors, some very good priests who were at my family's multi-generational parish, at least just my great-grandfather and all of my grandfather's siblings and my father grew up with this parish. And my at some point, the two priests who were there were sent away by the local archbishop. My hometown happened to be the seat of the diocese, and the archbishop at the time was more concerned with writing mystery novels than he was with shepherding the flock. And one of the impediments to him being able to write his mystery novels was to was to make sure that tradition was squashed. There was no parish, there was no church in my hometown that celebrated the Latin Mass ever. Um, Even all the way up until I left Pennsylvania and came down here to Virginia. Now, at the time, I did not know the reasons for the dismissal of the two parish priests. And I would later be informed by my father, who recounted that it came about because the two priests were beginning to express interest in having celebration of both the new and old Mass in the same parish. And as soon as the Archbishop found out, they were gone. The priest that came in during I can't even remember what it's called, but the equivalent of the Confiteor in the Novus Ordo, whenever that would begin, the priest would never utter the word sin. And it drove my father mad, to the point where I think it was at least the third or fourth Sunday that we attended Mass, my father had had enough, and he stood up, and he stood up during the public confession, and this I remember clearly, my father saying, "It's called sin, Father," and he gathered us up, my whole family, and we left. My parents then would consult with one of the bishops at the diocesan cathedral, who was a little more friendlier to tradition, and who my parents were fairly familiar with. And he gave my parents direction on what the next steps were. He had us come and attend at the cathedral a few times until there was another incident. And this incident, I want to say it was during Advent, actually. It may have been the second Sunday of Advent. And they were insistent on singing hymns, which is kind of contradictory to what I'm used to experiencing now during Advent. And the congregation just wasn't engaging with the music. Maybe two people who were attending were singing. And the priest or bishop, whoever it was that was celebrating, he interrupted the service. He interrupted the Mass to come down down away from the altar, and he scolded the congregation for not fully participating in the hymns. At that point, my father, in this instance, he did not say a word. He gathered us up, and we left. Afterwards, we would attend. I remember one of the first Latin masses that I attended, I believe, was in a crypt beneath the I don't know if it's the crypt, but um, beneath the National Basilica of the Immaculate in Washington, D.C., was the first time I encountered a Latin Mass. And I think it was a one-off because we never went back. We never went back to that one. But while we were there, we met some Opus Dei fathers who pointed us in the direction of St. Boniface in Pittsburgh. Um, so we would get up every morning on Sunday, and we would, I mean, crack of dawn. Mass, I think, was at 10, and we were living it was about 2 hours at the time. The Route 22 hadn't been developed to what it is today. Now you can get to Pittsburgh from my hometown in about an hour and 30 minutes, give or take traffic. So we would pack up and we would 6:30 in the morning, hop in the car, or we would borrow my late grandfather's van. He had one of those converter vans, and because it was big enough to fit all of us, and so we would get in that and we would drive to Pittsburgh to St. Boniface, and for the life of me, I cannot remember the name of the pastor who was there, but we attended there for a number of years. Three. Let's see. I have to count. Okay. Yes. So, to the best of my recollection, I believe that at least three of my siblings were baptized at St. Boniface in Pittsburgh. I think also while we were there, we came to know and became my father became a close acquaintance of the gentleman who created Catholic Match, which is an online Catholic dating website. I would say in name only at this point, since on there you can advertise what dogmas of the church related to dating in the marital life are that you affirm. And so I could say it's Catholic Match in name only because so many of the profiles of the women on there are they all reject the Immaculate Conception, and they reject the teachings on marital sex, and they reject the teachings of um, abortion and contraception. So take that with a grain of salt. But anyhow, so at some point, the then Archbishop Worrell, who later became Cardinal Worrell, eventually took an axe to the Latin Mass in Pittsburgh after the pastor of that parish went on Mother Angelica and made the case for the Latin Mass. He must not have liked what the pastor had to say. So for a number of years, we were left without a place to attend. Eventually, we found a small little church in the middle of rural Pennsylvania, about 40 minutes away. We would drive there. I remember his name, Father Brandon. He was this very kind hunchback he was a hunchback. Um, and I remember his last, before he was sent away, we took him on, we gave him a tour of the region. He was a very well traveled priest, but I forget the reasons why the Latin Mass stopped there. So now, eventually, I grow up. I become an adult. I get my degree in nursing. I start working as a nurse. My family moves to Virginia before I spend yet 6 more years in Pennsylvania. And during this time, I, uh, I guess you would say, would have a crisis of faith. I fell away. Uh, at some point, got swept up into Zen Buddhism, and from there began. I had begun making preparations to start involvement um, with sort of modern the modern misconceptions of ceremonial magic. Um, I got swept up in this idea of forming your own Wiccan tradition, and that there were different flavors of Wicca, and one of them was Christian Wicca, and why it had to be Christian was, I guess, just the back of my mind yearning to remain somehow connected with my family, as I was living alone at the time. I had friends. Well, I had acquaintances, and I had one friend who behaved like a sister, uh, who I'm still in contact with today, despite unfortunately her being very hard broiled and very dedicated to some hodgepodge form of witchcraft. But in reality, it's more like the TikTok variety. It's pure aesthetics for the sake of the dopamine hit that she thinks it gives her. I I pray. I do pray for her. Anyhow, um, this at some point, at some point. Well, I should say, at this point, I was the only one of my siblings that received First Communion. All of the other parishes that we attended that had Latin Mass, they never lasted long enough. They never lasted long enough until long enough for my siblings who came to the age of reason, until they were able to begin participating in the other sacraments. So eventually there was a parish, just to kind of backtrack. Eventually, before my family left, before I graduated from nursing school, we had found a parish in central Pennsylvania that was being run by a Benedictine monk from Latrobe, the Latrobe Monastery. And as I understand it, even to this day, he still celebrates the Latin Mass. In fact, I recall on a number of occasions he had stated in homilies that he would rather die. He would rather die than to give up the Latin Mass. And so they would have to tear him from the parish unless they threw him in a casket, as he would jokingly say. When we started attending, he had the free standing altar in addition to the high altar. But he had the freestanding altar on wheels. He actually called it Luther's table, and he would do new mass on the freestanding, and then he would do the Latin Mass. And when it was time for the Latin Mass, he would roll the freestanding altar off to the side, in front of one of the side altars, so that they were free to process in a straight line up to the foot of the high altar for the Latin Mass. Thankfully, that eventually the freestanding altar went away, and he strictly celebrated both masses ad orientem. And as far as I can tell, based on the pictures I have seen uploaded as of late, it looks like he still continues to celebrate both old and new ad orientem. So, but anyway, to go back, yes, so I had a falling away, went into Zen Buddhism for about a year and a half, and gradually worked my way over into preparing to earnestly pursue some form of some strange Frankenstein man-made tradition of Christian Wicca, until I came across. So it was during this time that a few things happened. The first is that the SSPX announces that they are building a seminary, or they had laid the cornerstone for the seminary. I remember attending that Easter Sunday Mass with my family, where they laid the cornerstone. At that point, it was 2013, I had not yet fallen away. So I was present for that. And then eventually they, around 2015 or so, my family begins attending the chapel at the seminary. Fast forward to about 2017, I learn that my siblings are finally going to have their first communion, and that they're going to be in preparation for confirmation. Now, up until this point, I had not been confirmed. Again, because not being able to attend for long enough a parish, and also because there were at the time we did not have any friendly bishops to be able to give us the old rite of confirmation. And all of a sudden, it's like whatever I had been holding on to fell away. This sort of angst that I had towards my parents for having waited so long to fully form my siblings in the faith. So that fell off my shoulders, and right about the same time, I come across two things. Roger Buck's blog, Curioso Sacratissimum, same title as the book, and a book by Agostino Thaumaturgo. At the time, he was writing under the pseudonym Brother ADA. And the blog post from Roger Buck was about Valentin Tomberg, and how Valentin Tomberg helped him to reconsider Catholicism, or to even begin to consider Catholicism. And then Brother Ada's book, or Agostino Thaumaturgo's book, is literally titled The Magic of Catholicism. In fact, I have a copy right here. This is the exact copy that I had picked up. Um, in fact, it arrived the day that my dad reached out to me. My father reached out to me to tell me that my siblings were receiving First Communion. And let's see, what is it? Real Magic for Devout Catholics is the subtitle. Obviously, an incredibly provocative subtitle. But what's funny is what's rather what's quite fascinating to me is his Thaumaturgo's simple his simple trying to see if I can find it. Somewhere in the beginning here. He basically lays out that all that that magic, quote unquote magic, according to Thaumaturgo, is applied theology. If you take Catholic theology and you put it into practice, miraculous things do happen. Therefore, that's how he defines magic. This acted as my sort of refresher catechism, for better or worse. And quite frankly, looking like I'll have to reread this again, but frankly, I don't see, I didn't, nothing in here jumped out at me aside from his little modification to the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, which I didn't have any real interest in since it has its origins in the Golden Dawn, which is all just the Golden Dawn is just stupid. I always have thought I've always thought that the Golden Dawn is inauthentic. Always had been, always would be. So this was sort of my recatechizing, because honestly, in here is just a refresher on what the Catholic Church teaches, what are the seven sacraments, what is grace, what are sacramentals, what is the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist, what is the theology of transubstantiation, what's the theology of angels, what are angels, how do they operate, why there are angels, what's the Catholic teaching on guardian angels, and all of that is in this book. If I can just put it away without messing up the rest of the shelf here. There we go. And so there was that book recatechized me, got me to have a profound illumination of conscience. And so I made my way to confession. And as I was going up to confession, terrible pit in my stomach. Just had a horrible pit in my stomach. I thought I was going to throw up. And it was sunny. It was a beautiful day. The weather was wonderful. I rolled down the windows. I was afraid I was going to have to pull over to throw up or something. But I get there, and Father and I sit down for about 2 hours. It was a 2-hour long confession going through everything. everything. Him giving spiritual direction, me being able to eventually, finally confess some things I had held on to. So, before confirmation and as I was growing up, there were things that were just too unconscionable in my mind to ever confess. And so I've my whole childhood, my whole adolescence was practically just not even giving full confession, sacrilegious communion out the wazoo. And so now I'm laying it all out there. And then we get to the act of contrition and absolution. And as we begin that portion of confession, all of a sudden, the wind starts blowing. Rain starts pouring down. There's a bright flash of lightning, massive crashes of thunder. And then as soon as we finish, it stops. The sun comes back out. We go outside. Father's poor garden's like completely trashed from the wind. A bunch of branches were shaken off of trees in the garden, falling. The branches, heavy branches, falling into his flower beds. And mind you, this is approaching the feast of Corpus Christi. So we looked at each other, and he said, Father said, "Oh, clearly somebody didn't want you coming here today." Or someone is incredibly upset with you. So that's how grace turned me back around and helped bring me back into the fold. So meditations on the tarot didn't come around until sort of between my father announcing my family was returning and my confession. I started reading meditations on the tarot somewhere in there. After reading Roger Buck's blog post, I picked up a copy of Meditations because it sounded like it was, if it helped Roger convert to Catholicism, maybe it would help ease me back, since I had spent about 2 years basically like nearly destroying whatever catechesis I had received growing up. So, and it certainly did that, and then some. And all of this to say that, in fact, all of this, this anecdote, my experience, right? It's anecdotal, but I maintain that what I experienced was touched upon in meditations on the tarot. The specifically the bits about the 3 categories of magic: sacred, personal, sorcery, and a lot of the stark warnings that Tomberg gives about that he gives to quote unquote Hermeticists. Tomberg was part of anthroposophy for quite a long time, and after his conversion to Catholicism, he swore it off. He even wrote in a letter that he wished he had never penned anything anthroposophical about Christianity whatsoever. The Our Father courses that he gave, he later in life, he completely rejected that. He rejected it, um, and wished that he could go back and prevent himself. He's expressed this. He expressed this in letters later in life. Letters, which interestingly, only one of was published in um, uh, the Hallman biography. Um, yeah, not to mention, and this is one of the subjects that we're going to be dealing with today. Um, the title kind of says it all. Infidelity being the main theme, and then disclosure and the A word. We'll get to the A word here in again a little later on. So, so we have. So for with myself, I went through some of this. I actually can distinctly remember the things I was writing, the things I was thinking about, formulating. Um, I mean, at one point, I was just putting some just absolutely deranged nonsense into notebooks that I think I don't even have down here in Virginia. I mean, I was at one point I gone and had attended a Unitarian Universalist service just to meet everybody and see what it was about. Because I don't know why. At some point, someone turned me to Khalil Gibran's The Prophet. So I read The Prophet, and the sadly there was no Baha'u'llah. There was no Baha'i anywhere in the area I was growing up with. The closest thing to any of that would have been the Unitarians. I poked my head in to the Unitarians at one point, just and I was taking some of those ideas, and I was really running with them, just going completely off the deep end. Uh, and in fact, it may have even led to some mental health issues. In fact, I'm convinced it led to a few mental health issues um, that occasionally, like whenever, since 2017, whenever I start to kind of fall away, I the first thing that comes back is the anxiety, and then after the anxiety, the depression. But as long as I'm attending mass, attending the sacraments, praying, reading scripture, doing spiritual reading, making preparations for the things I do with this channel, the journaling I now do. Um, it's like I've thankfully been able to stop taking medication, which is fantastic because being on the medication was quite the torture. So what was it? Um, what were some of the things that were spewing from my head through the tip of my pen in some of these older notebooks? Just like uh, I took the Kabbalion, I took Khalil Gibran, I took Rumi. Uh, Gosh, I took the I Ching, and not even the original I Ching. Some like reinterpretation of the I Ching. Oh God, it was terrible. Um, and I was thinking, just it was it was really, 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 really bad. Um, let's see. Oh, I just got a comment. It's like, I didn't know you used to be Baha'i. So did I many years ago, almost 50. Oh, well, okay, to clarify, I didn't, I technically wasn't officially Baha'i. All right, I had read the Prophet. I read up on the whole Baha'i movement, and sort of took some of those ideas and I ran with them as much as was possible on my own. And again, it was some utterly deranged nonsense that I put in, and and I've even thought about burning those notebooks, but right now they're still up in Pennsylvania, tucked away somewhere. I don't have access to them right now. Um, but why? So again, why was this happening? What is it about trying to be the Kabbalion style Hermeticist that led to this derangement? And um, and so at some point, about what, maybe 6 months ago, I took the time to go through all of Meditations on the Tarot, and I took in referencing the index, I went to nearly every mention, substantive and topical mention of Christian Hermeticism or Hermeticism, and I transcribed them. I transcribed them all into their own section in my Zettel book, or my like Zettelkasten style notebook. Maybe I will do a video about. Well, I kind of have done a video of my notebook method, um, but I am considering maybe trying the Zettelkasten method again. I don't know. We'll see. I might just stick with the method I have here. So so I have an entire section in here where I by hand wrote out passages, topical passages, not just because in the index it'll say, it's like, oh, you can, this word occurs on these pages, and some of the pages that it occurs on, it's not very topical. It's more like referential. So I made sure that the passages I put down in this notebook about Christian Hermeticism and Hermeticism were topical, where he was speaking about Hermeticism specifically. And so right off the bat, I was flipping through these earlier today in preparation for the stream, and I came across this particular passage that is in page 135 in in the letter on the lover. And in this passage, I will say Tomberg does define. He actually gives a pretty concise definition of what Christian Hermeticism is. I mean, it's pithy. It's a very good definition, and it does a really good job of kind of encapsulating exactly what it is. Elsewhere, he makes it even more pithy and says that it's the practice of the dimension of depth within the church. But here, he specifically talks about what is Hermeticism without grace. So, and I will quote, um, Hermeticism without grace is only sterile, erudite historicism. Hermeticism without effort is only superficial, sentimental aestheticism. There is certainly the work in Hermeticism, and this work is the child of grace and effort in order to be truly Hermeticism, which is only Christian. That the Hermeticism with grace and effort can only be Christian, which he argues in different ways, not with that exact phraseology, but he does make this argument elsewhere. He constantly is warning about what happens when you cut off when you cut off Hermetic thought and practice from grace, especially grace. And it leads to, he sometimes uses the phrase crystallization, this solidifying, this hardening of the heart that happens. And he also talks about the closed loop. Whereas with grace, there's a spiral, it's a spiral upward. But when you are cut off from grace, you're stuck in a loop. He covers that in chapter 10, or in letter 10 on the Wheel of Fortune, which interestingly, as I was going through meditations, there was not one topical instance of Christian Hermeticism or Hermeticism that occurred in that chat in letter 10, which I found interesting, because I was really hoping that there would be. I was hoping that there would be, to kind of help explain, a little bit more, but you can kind of infer the consequences of cutting Hermeticism off from grace. It's all through all. So what happens when it is cut off? When it's cut off from grace, is you get stuck. You get caught into this, you become like a dog chasing its tail, spinning round and round and round, getting absolutely nowhere, becoming self-absorbed. You become self-referential. You begin to get that sort of Übermensch complex. You get this type of complex where you think it becomes like it can become a Gnostic tendency, a big G Gnostic, as in referring to the spectrum of flavors of errors that got lumped into the modern, and it is a modern category, getting lumped into big G Gnostics. So you have, and this is what was going into these notebooks, was just this ridiculous self-referential, not even a spiral downward. It was I was going nowhere. I was spinning my wheels, burning rubber. Nothing was happening. I was stuck. And yeah, it was no way to live. It really is no way to live. Now, one of the things that I've noticed is that there's, and I believe Roger Buck, in in an episode he did a few months ago or so with his wife, Kim, They did an episode where they talked about Christian Hermeticism and fidelity to the Catholic Church, to the teachings of the Church. Obviously, I know that if any of my viewers, which I know a few are, uh, if you're Orthodox, I know that you'll interpret this through the lens of Orthodoxy. Um, like in your head, you'll swap out the word Catholic for Orthodox, and it's fine. Um, I'm not here. I'm not here to get into the weeds about the Great Schism or anything. So, but there's this. He in this episode, Roger mentions on Substack that there's this growing movement of Christian Hermeticism, and he expresses his concern at how disconnected it is from the Christian part. So just yesterday, out of curiosity, I went on Substack and I just searched Christian Hermeticism, and I just did a cursory scroll. Came across a few faces that I'm familiar with from over in Facebook. Now, I'm noticing that a lot of the spaces on Facebook, a lot of the groups on Facebook that used to be bustling with discussion and question answer and debate, healthy debate about theology and Hermeticism, history, and so on and so forth. All these groups have just become dry, very dry. Nothing's really happening. People are just spamming stuff now, and it seems that they've all moved over to Substack. I gave it a try. I might give it a try in the future. As of right now, I'm not really in a place where I can afford to do that or have the time to do that. But I did take a look, and it is quite. I took a look. I searched and just scrolled through the results. Saw some familiar faces. Saw some unfamiliar faces, and I saw a lot of. I saw a lot of the sort of things that I recognized myself having done in the past when I had cut off my hermetic attempts from grace, and it did not look. It did what I was seeing did not look healthy. Some of the excerpts that I read um, were looking very clearly to me like what I saw in what is it? What is his name? Harry Salmon. Uh, I saw the same impetus in Harry Salmon's biography of Tomberg. And it was actually quite worrisome. Um, Not to try to ride on Roger's coattails or anything in regards to this subject, but I only bring him up because his testimony that we see on his blog has had is still having a tremendous effect on my working out of salvation, my personal working out of salvation, my journey with the faith. And I still think back to to the time that I was reading that and discerning that spirit that spurned me to return back to the church because of what Roger had written, and the direction it's led to this channel. It's led to so many experiences that I've had, especially at communion, that I simply am in awe of. So please forgive me if I seem heavily referential to Roger Buck. He he's probably become sort of an unintentional father figure of Christian Hermeticism, as it ought to be lived out and practiced. So, and so what is that? What is that supposed to look like? Well, Roger is a very good example of this. He is he is working out his fidelity to Holy Mother Church the best that he can. And that is uh, that is the calling. Like, if you consider yourself a Christian Hermeticist, what you're not going to do is post pictures of your little prayer altar with all the different crystals you bought from the metaphysical store down the street. I'm not saying I'm not saying not to to acquire precious stones. By all means, please do. Um, Hildegard von Bingen gives us a plethora of reasons why we should have these in our apothecary, especially if, as we try to here at this channel, or at least as far as I try to be an actual, so like to be a Sophiurgist in earnest, and part of that deals with using God's creation with my interaction with it, my stewardship of it, my bringing creation to my submission for greater glory and towards the restoration of all things in Christ, in order that through myself, through the instruments at my hands, can become an instrument of the Trinity. That's Sophiurgy. That's what I refer. That's what Tomberg calls it, sacred magic. I call it Sophiurgy, just because I think it sounds a little more serious. And I understand there's always the negative connotations with the word magic. I myself don't have much issue, because I understand what Tomberg means. I understand what Morello means when he uses the word magic. So anyhow, but the fidelity to the church it's paramount. It's absolutely paramount. You cannot have Christian Hermeticism without submission to Christ, and you can't have submission to Christ unless you're submitting to the church that Christ founded. It's as simple as that. And for all of the Christian Hermeticists who go on and on about Sophia, not saying that's right. It's not. We're not discussing here whether it's right or wrong. To get into that, clearly, I'm beginning to dip my toes into there. I'm getting my feet wet in the established and traditional Mariology of the Catholic Church. before I start to dip my toes into Sophiology, in order to I've gotten the little primer, Submerged Reality by Michael Martin. Very good book, written before he kind of got off the deep end a little bit. Um, and so that's another subject for another time. But otherwise, we have you to get back on track here. The necessity for fidelity. It's all throughout Meditations on the Tarot. What Tomberg is constantly stressing, the three vows: chastity, poverty, and obedience. There are three legs of a stool. Without one of them, the stool can't stand. It's You have to have the obedience. And unfortunately, people such as Harry Salmon and a handful of anthroposophists out there, what was his name? Robert Powell, the guy who did the English translation of Meditations on the Tarot. Even he, I would argue, falls into the closing of the loop, that self-referential loop that is not inspired by grace. I see this. I see this in Michael Martin. Um, I see this in quite a handful of self-proclaimed Christian Hermeticists, on in Facebook, on Substack, from what I can see, and many of them have maybe too much of a reliance on Steiner and anthroposophy, and some, such as Harry Solomon, have even gone as far as to try to frame even Tomberg in his post-convert, after his conversion, has gone so far as to say that even Tomberg, who who swore off anthroposophy for himself, Solomon's suggesting that him converting to Catholicism was in order to basically, and this is a paraphrase, to use Catholicism to accomplish what anthroposophy seeks to accomplish. Now, I suspect that part of this has to do with an overemphasization of Tomberg citing Teilhard de Chardin, who who is who was whose ideas were condemned by the church. Probably one of the few post-conciliar condemnations that I'd say is pretty legit. There's absolutely nothing in Teilhard de Chardin that anyone should be considering. However, and unfortunately, as a fact of history, at the time that he was writing, his works were sort of the fad. They were sort of the fad, sophisticated theological ideas that people were caught up in. Another, aside from Tomberg, another two other Catholic figures that I'm aware of were what is it, Dorothy Day and Flannery O'Connor, the one of the great American novelists. They were, it was kind of trendy to be into Teilhard, and sadly for the time, Tomberg was too, and that's to his fault, because now we can look back and see just how incredibly detrimental Teilhard's ideas were for Christianity across the board. And so the anthroposophists look to that when they read Meditations on the Tarot, and it's like, see, Catholicism's not the be all end all. And even within Catholicism, yes, the be all end all obviously isn't the church. The church is a means. The church is the church is the means with which sanctifying grace is distributed through the sacraments. And it is only the church that can confect the sacraments. They're the only ones. It's the church is the only one who can administer the sacraments. Steiner cannot administer the sacraments. Tomberg cannot administer the sacraments. Only the church can administer the sacraments. Now, for those who might be watching who disagree that Christian Hermeticism is supposed to be obedient to the Catholic Church, let's start off with the definition that Tomberg gives us in his letter on the Lover. Quote, Christian Hermeticism, i.e., the whole of traditional mysticism, gnosis, magic, and occult philosophy passed through baptism and transfiguration by the fire, light, and life of Christianity. All right. So, what is the fire, light, and life of Christianity? Earlier, I believe in The Magician. If we go over to get there. All right. So, what is the fire, light, and life of Christianity? Well, we know that Christ is the life. He's the way, the truth, and the life. The fire and the light. It's Jesus Christ. He is the light of the world, right? And for us who participate in the body of Christ, we are also the light of the light of the world and the salt of the earth, right? So, mysticism, gnosis, magic, and occult philosophy have passed through baptism. In what way have they passed through baptism? Let's see here. I'm trying to remember where he goes into it. Well, it's later on. The question comes up in the same letter on the Lover, where he poses the question: does Christian Hermeticism simply borrow the fundamental principles of its Hermetic philosophical teaching from Catholic theology? Notice he uses the word borrow. Does it borrow? And he goes and says, it should not be forgotten that Christian Hermeticism is not a religion apart, nor a church apart, nor even a science apart, which would compete with religion, with the church, or with science. It's a connecting link, a hyphen between mysticism, gnosis, and magic, expressed through symbolism. Symbolism being the means of expression of the dimension of depth and height, and therefore of ecstasy and ecstasy, of all that is universal, which corresponds to the dimension of breadth, and of all that is traditional, corresponding to the dimension of length. Being Christian, Hermeticism accepts the cross of the universality, the tradition, the depth, and the height of Christianity. So, Let's see. And it kind of breaks off, and one of the things about meditations on the tarot is he doesn't write topically. It's a very colloquial book. He's speaking in conversation with you and is kind of like branching off, going on tangents. But at some point, Tomberg goes on to talk about how the purpose of Christian Hermeticism is to preserve the soul of true religion. Let's see. Trying to find where that was. I probably should have flagged it before I started. Probably should have flagged it before I started the stream, right? Let's see. I think it might have been earlier. So he does admit that Hermeticism is the antecedent of the mystery of the second birth or the great initiation. Now, the second birth, great initiation, he says, is the white light that that through a prism breaks off into the seven sacraments of the church. But let's see. So far as it is even concerned, initiates no one. All right, so yeah, no one's a master of it. It doesn't rival religion or science. Here we go. All right. So this is Tomberg in Meditations on the Tarot. This is from page 5 in The Magician. Christian Hermeticism has no pretension to rival either science or religion. He who is searching here for the true religion, the true philosophy, or the true science is looking in the wrong direction. Christian Hermeticists are not masters, but servants. They do not have the pretension of elevating themselves above the holy faith of the faithful, or above the fruits of the admirable effort of workers in science, or above the creations of artistic genius. Hermeticists know it well and do not flatter themselves to be better, to believe better, to know better, or to be more competent. They do not secretly guard a religion, which to them is appropriate, to replace the existing religions, or a science to replace the current sciences, or arts to replace the fine arts of today or yesterday. What they possess is only the communal soul of religion, science, and art. All right? So what he's saying here is the Christian Hermeticist is not setting himself apart from true religion. Notice he specifically is talking about true religion. And later, elsewhere in Meditations on the Tarot, he's pretty explicit that the true religion is the Catholic Church. So there's and right here they do not have the pretension, like a true Christian Hermeticist who is chaste, who's chaste, poor, and obedient. All right. Why are they chaste? They're chaste because they're not falling into the trap that René Guénon fell into, where he was just hopping from religion to religion to religion to religion until he just became a syncretist. You know, he's a true Christian Hermeticist is not is not a goldfish with a memory of 3 seconds that is only chasing its appetites. Okay, it's not the hallmark of a Christian Hermeticist is not to be going chasing after every squirrel that tickles your fancy. You're not going after the mailman. You're not going after every garbage truck that goes by. You're not going to be chomping at the bit to go chase anything that just passes by your senses, right? Chastity of the mind, chastity of the soul, chastity of what one affirms, chastity of what one, like, beneath chastity, like, you peek under chastity, it's fidelity. You have to have fidelity, and fidelity requires both chastity and obedience. And Tomberg is telling us multiple times in many different ways that you have to be fidelitous to true religion, true science, and true art, true philosophy. And the Catholic Church is the only place you can get that. It's the only place. And so, speaking on Christian Hermeticists, they know it well, do not flatter themselves to be better, believe better, know better, or to be more competent. All right? They do not secretly guard a religion which to them is appropriate. All right? Notice the phrase there, which to them is appropriate. So a fake Christian Hermeticist is someone who cuts themselves off from grace, gets stuck chasing their tail, and they think that they are better, that they believe better, that they know better, that they're more competent, that they alone secretly guard true religion and everyone else doesn't, and that it's a religion which they themselves find appropriate in order to replace it with whatever is existing, and to replace science with the current science and arts with the current arts. And I'm here to tell you, before ever having read Meditations on the Tarot, that right there is what I was doing. That right there is what I was caught up in doing before having my reversion back to the Catholic faith. I was spinning my wheels, going nowhere, doing exactly what I just read. And when we look at some of the Christian Hermeticists on Substack and elsewhere, so many of them do not take the perennial magisterium of the church seriously. They just don't. I certainly am not perfect in my breadth of knowledge of every little tidbit in the magisterium. I am still learning. We all are forever learning. In fact, Tomberg even says that a Christian Hermeticist is forever a pupil. We're all each other's, like, I am the pupil to another. They are a master to me, but they are also a pupil of me as well. Nobody is the master over all except Christ. And how is Christ master over us? through his church, because he established it for our benefit, for the salvation of our souls. It's how the medicine is administered. The church is the hospital. The priests are the nurses. Christ is the physician. Christ prescribed the remedy. The clerics are the nurses. We, being the patients, when so like in healthcare, after you've had to stay in the hospital, the nurse comes and they tell you, they give you your discharge plan, which is everything that you need to do so that you can go home and stay healthy, right? The nurse teaches you how to stay healthy. They administer the medication prescribed by the physician, and they teach you how to stay healthy once you leave. It's very similar. It's very similar. It's not a perfect analogy, but it's similar. So like we being the patients, we have to go home and we have to make sure that we practice the things that we were taught to do in order to stay healthy. In this case, in the case of the church, we are given the arsenal, like an amazing arsenal of means to keep ourselves spiritually healthy. Now this idea of the anthroposophists basically trying to appropriate. They're trying to appropriate the church for their own ends because they think that they are the true philosophers, the true religious, the true artists. They look at the church as a means to their end, and the reason that the anthroposophical end is not the actual end is because they view they look at a Christ that is not the Christ. Their conception of who Christ is not who Christ is. Their Christology is way off. And so whatever it is they think Christ is a false Christ. And they don't know it. They don't realize it, and they will deny it up and down. That's fine. They can deny it all they want. But this is why Harry Solomon in his biography treats the Catholic Church the way he does, treats Tomberg's conversion to the Catholic Church the way that he does. He does it out of the perspective that the Catholic Church is a means towards the end, towards the anthroposophical end of things. And it's supposed to be the other way around. If you're going to be truly a Hermeticist, a Christian Hermeticist, if anthroposophy was true, there would be a recognition from them that the Catholic Church is the end. Like the Catholic Church is supposed to be the end. Fidelity to the Catholic Church is supposed to be the end of anthroposophy, if anthroposophy was true, which it's not. Christian Hermeticism is supposed to guard the communal soul of the Catholic religion. Now, why does Tomberg use the word communal? Because it's a hearkening to the sacrament of communion. And what happens at the sacrament of communion? We partake of the flesh and blood of our Lord. We become the most intimate with Christ that we can ever accomplish in this life. And it is such a serious endeavor that improper discernment of the true presence of the body and blood, soul, and divinity of Christ in the Eucharist condemns you. Deadly serious stuff. And we're reaching a point where this spirit of this false hermetic impulse has bled into the cardinals and the bishops, and possibly even the Pope. I'm not going to be the sole arbiter of that decision, of that full critique. So, and what are the fruits of this? The fruits of it are rampant poor discernment of the true presence. And that leads to wrath. That leads to divine wrath. All the ways that divine wrath is wreaked upon us. And one of the most common being given up by providence to our enemies. So fidelity to the church, if one is going to call themselves a Christian Hermeticist, you can only do that if you are guarding true religion, true philosophy, true science, and true art. If you're guarding the communal soul of true religion. And this is where the mystagogical approach to catechesis, this is why the mystical in the Catholic Church, to have a revival of Catholic mysticism, is so incredibly important. And without it, we're never going to be able to accomplish true, honest to goodness Sophiurgy, true sacred magic, on the part of those of us who are laity. So, and it isn't just anthroposophy that is appropriating the Catholic Church and Catholic symbolism and whatnot for their own ends. We even see this with the Protestants. There's a company that I keep getting ads for on Facebook and elsewhere, where it's a bunch of Calvinists selling merch, and it's all Catholic artwork and symbols, the Jerusalem cross, the depiction of Saint Michael the Archangel, put on T-shirts, and they're selling it like, and they're even appropriating Deus Vult. It's just that gets us nowhere. It doesn't get civilization anywhere. And it's quite offensive for myself personally. But we even see Protestants appropriating the symbols and aesthetics of the Christian Orthodox churches. It's obscene. It's obscene what's being allowed to happen, and they only feel the impetus to do so because we currently have a pontiff who seems more interested in a false unity amongst Christian persuasions But and and not that I necessarily truly apologize for this statement, but because I know it might potentially even offend my Orthodox viewers, but if it ain't Catholic, it ain't Christian. Um, the only compromise to that I'll probably make is if it ain't got apostolic succession, it ain't Christian. And there is no denomination of Protestantism on the face of this planet that has apostolic succession of any kind whatsoever. Certainly not the current Archbishop of Canterbury. Um, so that's all I really want to say about the issue of infidelity to doctrine, to the true religion. It's simple. It's that simple. If you want to be a Christian Hermeticist, you have to truly be fidelitous to the church, because it's the only true religion that there is. And the the purpose of the Christian Hermeticist to is to foster the mystagogic, where we are guardians of true symbolism. It's guardians of the dimension of depth, as Tomberg puts it. We have to protect symbolism. We have to protect the understanding of the symbols. We have to protect the mystagogic. And part of that is writing poetry. Part of that is composing transcendental music within a Christian milieu, within a tradition that harkens back to a Christian patrimony. And it requires contemplation. We contemplation of what all of these things mean, how they relate to the one true God. And it is an exploration of the depths and the protection of those depths. So that is Christian Hermeticism. It requires fidelity to the true religion, and there is no wiggle room. So all of these Substack these Substack Christian Hermeticists who are playing fast and loose with their fidelity to Catholic tradition and Catholic teaching need to have a rude awakening. And I'm willing to catch any and all heat on that. Real quick, I know I kind of went over on this subject, but I felt that it was rather important, especially for this channel. But I also wanted to touch briefly, while I still have a few minutes, I wanted to touch briefly on issues of speaking of false religion. Steven Spielberg released a trailer for his new Alien movie, his new Alien encounter movie, or whatever he wants to call it. And he's not even being subtle with it. He's calling it Disclosure Day. And quite frankly, I think I think at this point it's safe to say that Spielberg is a has-been director who clearly believes in some false sense, some type of false extraterrestrial messianism, which makes me wonder if he's even a monotheistic Jew, or if he's just ethnically a Jew but not religiously a Jew. Which also which also touches upon another issue, the eschatological issue that I briefly mentioned at the beginning of the stream. We are with some of the recent events, we are entering a very fast-paced new vibe where we're about to see we're about to see a in the U.S. we're about to see an anti-Semitism czar that's being appointed by President Trump, and this needs to if you are Catholic or Orthodox, you should probably realize what the issues that this is going to cause. If anything, it is a confirmation that we are approaching the next eschatological cycle, the next eschatological preparation, at the least. So on the one end, it's an eschatological preparation. On the other end, it is the eschaton. Okay. Whatever's happening, it's going to be somewhere in the middle there. And one of the things that I want to point out, and it's related to Bondi Beach. The way that it's being presented by the media is that it was an anti-Semitic attack. But no one is asking themselves why. Why would you call it that? Well, they're going to call it that because they want to, because it's I know it's the impetus, all right? I'm not gonna, like, if I say they, just understand it in terms of it is an impetus. It's an impulse, maybe even an egregore. It's like an algorithm. It's something that's operating under the skin, and even if no one is consciously aware of it, they follow it and become instruments of it, even if they themselves are unaware. And the impulse is this error. It's an error. And the error is this: that religion is connected to ethnicity. Right? When Christ established the church, when he died for us on the cross, he fulfilled everything that was required of the ethno-religion that was Old Testament Judaism. Because it was fulfilled, it is no longer valid. It no longer stands. Supersessionism is irrevocable. All right? Replacement theology is biblical. It's real. And It's God's will. Okay? And this is not my opinion. This is the teaching of the Catholic Church up until the 1960s, up until Nostra Aetate, which I'm not even going to go into all the what's wrong with that document, but before Nostra Aetate, the Catholic Church's teaching was that Christ's sacrifice negated the ethnic component of religion, the ethnic component of true religion, because the sacrifice was for all men, past, present, and future. Okay? So because the fulfillment of true ethno-religion was met, the need for ethno-religion no longer exists ontologically. So today, post-crucifixion, it is incorrect to say that that rabbinic Judaism is a true ethno-religion, because A, it is not true. It is not a true religion because it denies the Logos. It is not a true religion in the sense that it still considers itself ethnic, that there is an ethnic component. And even, even in the Talmud, there's like Gentile is a Gentile. Gentiles cannot be grafted on. There's only so much that a Gentile can do within scare quotes Judaism. Right? So for the media to be speaking in terms of to conflate religion with ethnicity post-crucifixion is a non sequitur. It does not hold water theologically, and we need to call this out. It's important to be firm and to call it out. With Christ's sacrifice, religion no longer required an ethnic component. The baptized are now the true race, for lack of a better phrase. I mean, it's not my phrase. Saint Justin Martyr said it best. Christians are the true Israelite race. So what happened at Bondi Beach was, for sure, Islamic extremism manifest. What is it that makes Islamic extremism? Like, what is it that motivates them? Is it ethnic or is it religious? In the case of Islam, it is an issue of religion. They are not concerned with the ethnicity of anybody who was there. They are concerned with the religion that was being publicly displayed. Celebration of Hanukkah, right? If it is true that there's no longer a racial or ethnic component to religion, in order for a religion to be true, then it stands to reason that it was not anti-Semitic what happened at Bondi Beach. but it certainly was anti-religious. All right, it was anti-Talmudism. Now, what's going to probably happen, and this is where we get into eschatological concerns. What's going to happen is this conflation of religion and ethnicity is going to continue. And none of the Protestants are going to bat an eye at it. They are going to they're going to bring themselves they're going to bring upon those of us who are Catholic and Orthodox they're going to levy charges of opposition to the Jewish religion as opposition to the Jewish ethnicity. They're going to use that to justify whatever the persecution is going to end up being. And we heard it from the mouth of the up-and-coming anti-Semitism czar. It needs to be, we as Christians need to be reminded that the early church fathers, the ones who were taught the faith by St. John the Evangelist himself, are really the only ones who have any business interpreting how Revelation's going to go down, how and the end times are going to play out. So when they tell you that the ones to carry out the persecution are going to be unbaptized Jews, possibly from the tribe of Dan, you have every reason to believe them, to believe that they've got it right, because they knew St. John. They talked with St. John. You didn't. We didn't. So we need to be prepared. And it's going to come where we're going to get hit from two frontiers. We're going to get hit from we're going to get hit from Zionism, and we're going to get hit from science, from godless so-called science. And what's funny is these two things come together in the person of Steven Spielberg. I'm being kind of funny, but it's, for those of us who are concerned with the depth of symbolism, this is we have to recognize what this is, right? We're being inundated through culture to let our guards down with regards to the demons from the cold void, because that's what they will be if we ever encounter them. And there will be all kinds of false religions. We've already seen some that have come and gone, where they will worship these things. The whole ancient aliens thing the scientists are going to claim they're the only ones that can communicate with them. And so they will be a false church. And then on the other side, on the other frontier, the other flank, we're going to get bombarded by the Talmudists. So, and why is it going to happen? Because we have been infidelitists. to the truth, to the true religion, which is infidelity to Christ himself. This is why it's important that if we're going to be Christian Hermeticists, that we get this right. Because time's running out for us to do so. Until next time, my dear unknown friends, please like, share, and subscribe if these live streams bring good fruit into your life, or at least good food for thought and contemplation. And until next time, until next week, thank you so much, and God bless.